can we get some of those answers? Yeah.
Talking to people that we know.
Okay, any thoughts of who you can go to?
You could go like to people in your community who have insights into like the specific problem, or you could go to people like for societal. Would you be, if we came and said you can't use as much water, how would you respond?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd start asking people from NOAA.
Okay, so start with some experts from NOAA.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say talk to like environmentalists.
Okay, environmentalists.
I know that my uncle works for the water department, and they always do tours of like how to go. They can do this whole spiel about the wasting and stuff. So maybe possibly field trip connections.
Okay.
The Census Bureau for just population increase, so you can see the patterns, and you can talk to your village water department to see who they're billing for what amount of water, if you're specific to your area.
Okay. Any other thoughts for addressing some of these questions? If we had some science teachers, maybe there's some experiments we can do. There's some things we can do with it. Okay. So, all right. So this is going to kind of wrap up the immersion. So thank you guys for participating and actually jumping in completely into the immersion. We're going to switch over to Kathy. We're going to talk a little more about the teacher's perspective of the whole process.
So you take off your student hat, put on your teacher hat, and if you can find the purple book we had, the PBL Matters, we always call this the purple book. If you can open up to the inside cover of the book, because I'm going to be talking a lot about this, and when I flash this slide there, everybody tries to feverishly write it down, and you have it right here. So that might be a good way a good place to start. So we're going to talk about, from the teacher perspective now, take a look under the hood and see what we actually did with all this. And remember, we just did in a half hour what you normally do in 3-4 class periods. Okay. So one of the things you have to do before you can even contemplate starting one of these things is prepare your learners and make sure that they have the skills in place in order to do what you want them to do. What kinds of skills do you think your teachers would need to have in order to, not your teachers, your students would need to have in order to engage in a problem like we just did? What kind of skills? Yes?
A very basic skill of working in groups, or working
Yeah.
with other people.
Yeah, they need to be able to work in groups and with other people. What else do they need to be able to do? Yeah?
They have to be confident in looking for outside resources in case they don't know the answer to some questions.
Okay, so looking for outside resources, doing some research, talking with people, those kinds of things. Okay, what else?
Like being understanding of other people's insights and things.
Okay, so they need to understand other people, work at this work in groups thing. Now I'm thinking back to the engineer that you guys listened to a little bit earlier this afternoon. She said it was important to work in groups. What other kind of work skills did her engineers need to have? I'm sorry, what? They also have to be able to work independently, right? Okay. Anything else you think of that they might need skills? Yeah.
Like being able to get all this information and being able to identify what the problem is and what's most important.
Right, okay. Figure out what's most important. That could be a big issue, right? Then, of course, if they're in your curriculum, if there are any specific skills for your curriculum, you'd also want to make sure they had those as well. So this is the diagram that I asked you to look at in our PBL Matters book. And we divide the PBL process into 3 main parts here. We have the understand the problem, which is what we did. We met the problem, we did a no need to know, and then we prepared a problem statement. The next part of the PBL process, and I'm going to be going through each of these stages again, so no worries, is exploring the curriculum, and this is where your curriculum comes in. We always try to emphasize that teaching through problem-based learning is not an add-on. This is what you would teach anyway, you're just framing it in a problem. So it's not an add-on, it's not extra time, it's just how you frame what you were going to teach anyway, and we're going to talk some more about that in a little bit. And so we have, when you're exploring your curriculum, you're going to gather information, have your kids share their information, generate some possible solutions. And we have this arrow here because this is the process that can repeat, iterative, okay? So maybe you'll find information that makes you want to go back and change your problem statement or your know and need to know list. Definitely the know and need to know list should be changing as you go through this. So you could go through this cycle many times, but eventually you have to stop. And this is where you come to determining the best fit solution, presenting the solution, and debriefing the problem down in the green part. So I'm going to walk you through this process. So here we met the problem. We saw the video from Mr. Alsop at the NOAA, and he actually is a real person down in Romeoville here. Can you guys think of, and we also, if we'd had more time, we had a letter from Mr. Alsop that we would have handed you guys to perhaps clarify. I heard walking around, some people weren't quite sure what the problem was. This is, when you design your meet the problem, this is where you can be more or less explicit in what the problem is, depending on what your students need and the curriculum you're trying to get at. So can you think of some other ways you might have your students meet a problem, other than a video and a letter? It's okay, go ahead.
I mean, you'd have to just have, like, be relevant, but like if they somehow encountered the problem, if there's something else they were doing.
Sure, absolutely. Like, do you have an idea in mind of that, or?
Not quite, no.
Okay. Yeah.
Drama.
Drama, okay. Have somebody role play it, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. Or then, you know, the actual person.
Yeah. You could have, when we take this on the road, Jim doesn't travel with us, but you know, you could actually, you know, have that person come in, right? What else could you do?
A newspaper article.
Sure, newspaper, magazine articles. You know, Brian, you're always talking about how he saves newspaper articles, you know. Any other ways you might want to introduce your students to a problem? Yeah?
It could be something that's occurring in their lives. It could be something within the school. Or
Sure.
something that they, you know, to discuss it with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Something in your school is great, you know, as long as it's relevant to the kids. Yeah?
I guess going into something in school, like, I don't know if it's possible, but I know that where I was teaching, like, the front office could, like, only intercom certain classrooms. So
Right.
maybe for the 2 science classes going on, they could do it. The principal gives them an announcement that something's an emergency, someone's gonna go talk to you.
Yeah. They love it when the principal or superintendent comes with a problem. Any other, yeah?
Student council is always encountered
Yeah.
problems, so. you can
Sure.
Go down and chat with them.
Yeah. What about field trips? Those are great too. Go out, oh, wow, what's going on here, guys? You know, that kind of. So there are multiple ways. You're really only limited by your imagination on how your kids could meet the problem. But why do we do it this way rather than me just coming in and say, hi, yeah, I'm your math teacher today, and this is the problem you're going to work on? Do you think you'll get quite the same engagement? Yeah, so that's right.
Credibility.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's the connection, like real world stuff, they feel like it's a lot more important than if you just,
Yeah.
like a basic outline of.
Yeah.
There's a credibility to someone from the National Weather Service saying there's a problem. Not
Right.
that you aren't awesome and
Yeah,
incredible,
sure.
but for weather and drought, if they're telling me there's a problem, there's probably a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. So yeah, this is how you hook your kids in and get them engaged. So after you've done that, you've met the problem and got them hooked, then you do the know and need to know list, exactly how we did it. There are multiple ways, you know, you can structure this. But one of the important things, we always say, this should be posted somewhere so the kids can always see it. Because this is where you're going back to keeping the class focused, this is what we're working on, and so forth. How might you think we always get asked about assessment. So how do you might think you might assess this activity, or how would you use it for assessment? Ideas, doing the know and need to know list. Any ideas? Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about the skills they needed to know involved, you know, the ability to collaborate and work individually and all of that.
Yeah.
We could perhaps assess people on level of participation.
Sure.
That sort of thing.
So he was saying, I don't know if you could hear in the back, yeah, his level of, the kid's level of participation in this and their collaborative skills. How else might building a know and need to know list help you with assessing your class? And not necessarily for a grade, but, yeah.
too, how, like, the solution that they came up with, if it addressed what they wanted to know.
Okay, sure. Now, where do you think, we're gonna talk about this more a little bit later, but the need-to-know list that you're trying to get at, that comes from your curriculum, okay? You're not actually, well, you kind of try to guess what the kids know, but actually what you want on that need-to-know list is a curriculum you want to get at. And so we're going to have to be talking more about that in a little bit. Then defining the problem. How many of you have ever been on a committee that really didn't do anything because no one defined the problem? No. So this is really the touchstone for the class, because this is, if the class starts to drift, rather than saying, no, we can't do that, you can say, you know, well, okay, that's really interesting, but how does that relate to what we're supposed to be doing, you know, what our task is. So that's what the whole purpose of the problem statement. This can be changed, and this also should be posted in your classroom to always, you know, send the kids back to it. But it can be changed if, you know, information arises that you need. And you can jump in anytime.
And just the other thing too is that this also, if we went to a problem statement, whose problem statement was I working towards? Was it mine? Did I put any information up on that slide? No, it was yours. So this also helps put the ownership back on your students. And that's really what one of these other goals of this is, not only to be the focal point for what they're going to do, but it also puts the ownership back on them. Now, we're going to give you guys the design for this problem that we did, because this is one that we've actually run with our Summer Sleuths program for middle school students. And there is a problem statement that we would want our students to move towards. But I won't tell you what that is. I will let you come up with it. I will coach you to help you go towards it. But I'm not going to tell you what the problem statement is that I want you guys to have. Because the second I tell you what the problem statement is, it's no longer your problem, it's now mine. And that's a key part of this too.
In the same way with the know and need to know list, once we start telling what needs to be known, it's not theirs anymore, they may not care, but if you can coach them towards that by strategic questioning, then it becomes theirs. We plan for information gathering. That's when Brian asks you folks, you know, well, how would you find out information? And whenever I do this, I always put internet up there first. We're done. Now what else can you do? Excuse me. Getting over a cold. Okay, so then there's the gather and share information piece of this. And this is where you actually get at your curriculum. This is where the stuff you're going to teach anyway comes out. If you have labs or activities that you were going to do for this topic anyway, you go ahead and do them here. This is, like I say, so PBL is not an add-on, it's getting at your curriculum. And the really important part of this is that a lot of it is the sharing. You can do what we call an all call, where if it's such a key activity, everyone needs to do it. Sure, have the whole class do it. But then there's also opportunities for jigsawing, where you have small groups doing things, and then they have to come back together and share. And so, for example, for internet research, what works really well often is having kids pick questions off that need-to-know list. Okay, this is your question, this is your question, this is yours, and then you're responsible for coming back and sharing that with the class. And that's what some of these posters, when we run this at the academy with kids, we have posters all over the place that the kids have made with information. Labs, hands-on inquiry, and these work very well with, or hands-on activities, manipulatives, or whatever it is you're using. These work very well, both as jigsaw or whole group. But once again, the idea is always relating back to this your need-to-know list. And, oh, what did we learn? Can we move this need-to-know over to the know list, that sort of thing. Just an example of a graphing activity we did with this was the 1-minute water calculator. It's a website where people put in how many people are in their family and size of their house and so forth, and come up with how much water they use. We did experts, and these are just some of the experts we did. Once again, the experts can be whole group or Jigsaw. And just examples of, US Silica was actually a mining company that uses a lot of water. And so they came and talked to us. NASA was talking about water and using water in space, those kinds of things. But this is where, when you find out and start bringing in information, that problem statement may change. And so we just have examples here where they changed their problem statement. The one on the left was the first one. These were the same group, right?
Same group,
yeah. And the one on the right, where it was how they changed it as they worked through the problem, in such a way that then they added conservation and how it's used. And then but you do have to come to a stop, or this research process can go on forever. And so you do have to get to the point where you say, okay, we're done. I usually tell the kids in advance, the date you have to be done by. I often make that due date a couple days before I really have to have it. Teacher thing, But then that's when they can start going back to their information and generating their solution elements. And so these are examples where they just brainstormed. Okay, we have all this information. What are we going to do with it? And so these are just some examples of solution elements. And then you have to determine, once you get all those solution elements, you have to figure out what's the best fit. And there are multiple ways to do that. I know there's matrices, there's priority lists, all different ways you can come about it. There's concept maps, but you need to come out. I've got SWOT up here and those kind of things, but you do need to come up with some sort of solution to present at the end of the project. And so then there's presenting the solution. And this is one of the key parts of this whole process is you've been presented a problem by somebody. It's so powerful when you have that person come back and hear the kids' solutions, because they feel like what they've done matters. And so this is just examples of kids presenting their solutions. And this is the part, I don't know about you guys, but when I taught, I always forgot this part or never had time for it, is debriefing. You finish your unit, you're all done, and you just move on to the next one and never really talk about what you did. And in PBL, this is probably the most powerful part of the process, is processing with the kids afterwards. So after you do your presentations, having the kids sit down and talk about how those presentations went. I always had my kids give each other glows and grows. They had to, so they could also learn how to give feedback. But thinking about how their presentation actually went and how it was received by their expert who came and heard it and so forth is really powerful to help them solidify their learning. And then this is the big piece here, debriefing the problem itself. There's some research out there that they taught middle school kids problem-based a unit. They did, some of the kids did it as a problem-based learning unit, some of the other kids did it as just a traditional unit. They gave them a test at the end. Actually, both groups scored about the same. They came back a time later, and I can't remember, several months or so forth. Gave them the test again. The problem-based learning kids scored way higher than the kids who learned it traditionally, because that learning had stuck in their head. But when they asked the kids if they learned a lot of times the kids who did the problem-based learning unit didn't think they learned as much. And I think part of it is because it wasn't traditional, they didn't realize it. But by doing this debriefing and going back, I've seen this myself in my classroom, the light bulbs start going on. Oh yeah, we did learn that. We did learn this by helping them pull this together at the end by debriefing. So I think that's it. You have more to add there, Brian? Or? Okay, because I believe this is where we're stopping right now. So we do have copies of